lines. He joins us at the panel. The Cory Booker thing struck me, Peter, and I've watched so many politicians now offer really profound, wonderful language on capitalism, and I think that they mean it, and they want everybody to have an opportunity, everybody to have a fair shake, and I believe everybody's intent of both political persuasion. I believe that most people actually feel that. But we seem to have lost a sense of retained risk, and the difference between an investor who has the responsibility for the risk of screwing it up and the incentive that comes with that, and this new paradigm which basically allows me to get rid of all that risk and call it capitalism.
But that's not capitalism. You can call it what you want, but it's not capitalism.
What's not capitalism?
Well, where you have socialized, yeah. I mean, that's government. That's crony capitalism.
But fair enough. But I'm saying politically, and that's your opinion, and I don't disagree with you, and I agree with what you're saying. But what I'm saying is, we have watched since 2008 these words mixed up all over the place.
Capitalism,
and I think it's time that we have to have a little bit more compassion for our politicians and teach them.
Capitalism is getting a bad name because we're not practicing it. When Obama says we need to create a society where everybody has a chance to succeed,
he means that.
But we don't have to create that. It's already here. The government just has to get out of the way and let the free market function and stop interfering with all their regulations and all their central planning.
Sure, but forget even the fixes, because I understand. But and the fixes. I don't want to get away from the fixes because everybody's got a different fix and a different thing. I want to stick to the singular thing, Karen, which is the concept of retained risk, and whether you're responsible for your decisions and your resources, and to collaborate with us or whoever's around you. And this is that's not a political posture. That is a cultural view that we all, as Americans, hold in our identity. We just seem to have lost the ability to understand how to practice it.
But it feels like, and I think this is part of the fairness argument the president was talking about, I think it's been part of the lesson that I think a lot of people in that 99% felt when the market crashed, is that there are a lot of people in this country who get to play by a different set of rules, so they don't retain the risk. And, you know, that whereas...
And those people come with access to politicians.
Right, the access to politicians, but also access, because of their money and their resources, to whether it's tax loopholes, you name it.
But I agree with that.
But whereas I think a lot of people, and I think what Obama's talking about is, there are a lot of people paid their mortgage, did everything they were supposed to do, still lost their house.
I don't want to make this about Obama. Don't make it about Obama. This is bigger than that.
Right, but he's talking about fairness. Why is it fair that my tax dollars are going to subsidize Solindra's loans?
But that's not fair. Fair enough. But listen, we all can forget Solindra's loans. Why are my tax dollars being used to pay off unclawed back AIG bonuses from 2005?
Well, the government should get out of the finance. It should get out of banking.
But
But the point is, my tax dollars going to fix the road on your street so that you can get your car
and drive down the road.
I mean, come on.
I'll stop the conversation.
You know what?
Let's stop it.
Local government.
Let's stop it. If you want to argue about roads and Solyndra, do it on another TV show. Seriously, I feel such a limited amount of time to be here, and there's so many other things that I'd rather talk about. I don't care about those things. I care about a culture, Susan, that has lost its ability to distinguish between actual retained risk and transferring it away. And we've got a small group of people that are using their access to the government and the banking system to hide behind the very language that all of us would share, regardless of Solyndra and Rhodes. We all share a culture of retained risk that's been taken from us, and neither political leadership, neither Republicans nor Democrats, have done anything but make it worse.
Well, because the politicians get elected by selling that influence. That's how they stay in office. And we got to take the power away from Washington.
We get it. So how is the question we're all trying to...
We got to limit the power of government. We got to take away the ability of people in Washington to dole out special favors. You know, we can't have the government subsidizing any industries, guaranteeing any debts, whether it's mortgages, whether it's student loans. The government needs to get out of the economy.
That is an aspiration. Well, I think that all of us know in principle is understandable, but beyond that, we have to be honest about where we are, which is we currently have no price integrity in any asset in America.
And we're on the precipice of collapse. That's where we are.
So let's be honest about that and say, okay, once we know where we want to go, which is to this place of integrity, we're in this place of non-integrity, we can't just do that. It's not like the switching political parties right now is going to change that. It's going to solve that problem.
But if you look at it from a place of academia, so we take away the politics, we take away trying to sell a message or this, how do you explain what the solution, maybe not what the solutions are rather, but what is actually happening now And not that it's just Washington we have to take away, but how do you kind of work towards fixing the problem or even identifying it at this point?
Well, we have very deep structural problems underlying our economy because for years, the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates artificially low to stimulate it. So we don't save enough, we don't produce enough, we borrow too much, we spend too much, the government is too big. All this is because we have this cheap money policy coming from the Fed. It's going to come to an end. When this thing collapses, it's going to be awful.
And I guess what we're saying is, how do you do it without the collapse? Because this room accepts that premise. You don't have to convince us of that. Yes, okay? We're saying, okay, this thing's going to have a heart attack, and we're saying, can we get in there and do heart bypass surgery before this turkey keels over? Because we know it's screwed up. And how do you sell the heart bypass surgery to a patient that doesn't want to see the doctor?
Well, you know, that austerity is getting a bad rap right now, but that's what we need. There's some bitter-tasting medicine that will cure this economy. But we don't want to do that. We want to keep shooting it up with the stimulus Novocaine so we don't feel the pain, but the disease gets worse.
Isn't there a third option, which goes to a debt restructuring not at the expense of the poorest, but a debt restructuring at the expense of the banks?
Well, the banks, but a lot of people who get checks from government are going to have to get smaller checks, whether they're government employees, government pensioners. But everybody's going to have to share in the sacrifice. Bondholders?
Yeah, Jimmy, what are you thinking?
Well, I think that it's a lovely ideal and it's lofty. I just think that at the end of the day, either one believes that the government has a role or doesn't. You're saying to me and to the panel and to the nation that you think the government has zero role when it comes to how capitalism functions. I don't agree with that. I think that it actually does have a role.
So you think the government should be able to eliminate capital requirements and invent money?
No, I think the government should say if you're going to play big, then you have to put more money up. That's called regulation.
Well, of course,
but the free market will provide that
regulation. The free market put us in 2008.
No, it didn't. That wasn't the free market. That was the government that did that. That's how come I predicted.
But this is a core disagreement.
I helped write Dodd-Frank, and I helped write Gramm-Leach-Bliley, and I got to tell you, you're wrong.
No, I'm right, and I predicted it when no one else did. You remember?
Of course.
I wrote.
But this is
interesting.
If you guys will be patient with me, I think this is very interesting because I know Peter for a long time. I know Jimmy for a long time. Okay, and I know that largely the three of us actually agree to the conversation that we're having. The only point of disagreement is whether it was the government that created the problem or whether it is the free market or unrestricted.
How about all of the above?
Which is words more than anything, because really what we're saying is retained risk and capital is central to the function of you think the free market does it, he thinks government does it.
No, I don't think government does it. No, I don't. I'm saying government can play a role.
But we
I'm not saying
fair enough.
We had the Federal Reserve that set interest rates too low. We had the government that was guaranteeing bank deposits and mortgages.
Disputes
there was no free market capitalism going on at all. The government created this monster.
Yes, but knowing that, I think that it's reckless. So we agree. Banks, everybody bought this madness.
Had a bigger paradigm shift than just who did what to whom.
Well, what I'm saying is that once we accept the fact that we've got this fazakad system, right, at 10 ways, that as much as we would like to be able to snap our fingers, restore capital requirements, and reset all prices, I would love that, right? That the impact on human life of doing that in the state of distortion we found ourselves is so violent that we ideally are going to need to find a transition that moves closer to price integrity as a matter of policy, as opposed to an apocalyptic.
And the most important price is interest rates, which have to go up.
That is
but no one wants to let them go up because the banks will fail and the government will have to default on its obligations. But those are the choices that we face.
And at the end of the day, until we acknowledge the real cost of capital, which is mispriced right now,
absolutely,
then you get these ripples of distortion. And my hope, at least for all of our sake, is that we're able to talk more in that I think we harm ourselves when we get lost in whether it's the government or the free market or the corporations or the government's fault, and that we serve ourselves when we acknowledge what we all need to acknowledge.